And I don't know how long you guys are going to play for, and I hope you can play forever. But if you don't, understand that some of the greatest things that you've been able to accomplish have been in your sport. Take those skills and transform them into the next part of your journey, because you're great people that just so happen to be great athletes. Greatness doesn't stop when you're done playing your sport. Greatness is who you are.
Y'all ready? Yeah! Y'all ready? Yeah! Right field! Good! Right field! Good! Right field! Good! Right down here! Right down here! Right down here! Right down here! Right down here!
Cool. Let's do it, man.
Sweet. So, first question is kind of a general open one, but you know, when it pops to your mind, greatest sports memory, greatest memory playing sports. What comes to mind? What's that moment?
First national championship.
All right.
Yeah, that one. I mean, I think just because it culminates everything that you've put into the season, and then also, I think even more importantly, you joined that group of kind of like elitists. You know, you grow up watching, well, at least for me, I grew up watching, you know, different championships and the confetti falling from the sky and the race. To have that same type of experience on a high level, it just makes you kind of appreciate, you know, like the struggles. Like from that day forward, it was like, okay, everything that kind of sucks is worth it.
Sure. So it's kind of that just culmination of climbing to the mountain and seeing what the view is from up top.
Yeah, just, I mean, because the struggles don't change, right? It's more so just kind of like the peak of the mountain. Like, you stop and it's like, well, damn, it sucks, and you're going to have to eventually climb another mountain again in life.
Right.
And especially with trying to build something or trying to accomplish something. And so for me, that's kind of like always like my go-to. Like, oh, man, like it sucks, but remember what like the fruits of the labor.
Awesome. Kind of the next question on that kind of that climb to the mountain. Was there a coach in your career that was the most influential, or that inspired something or ignited something different in you that stands out in your career?
Yeah, without a doubt, Ken Norton Jr.
Okay, awesome. So what about Ken Norton? I mean, I've heard, you know, stories, but why did he have such an impact?
For me, it was like I actually felt like he cared about me more as a person than he did as me as a player. And for me, that was like, oh, you want me to succeed in life and not just, you know, on Saturdays or throughout the week to make you look better, but you want me to be good for me. And so that kind of just pushed me through a lot of struggles, a lot of setbacks, and kind of just gave me at such a young age like that confidence within myself.
Sure. You know, I think at a young age, can you talk about just how important it is in those situations to have a coach or person like that to be there, support like that?
Yeah, that's the number one thing I think that's missing in all coaching. And it doesn't matter if you're in high school. I think you see it more at the high school level, as far as like, all right, yeah, I want to win games, but like, how are you doing in life? How's your family setting? How's your grades? How's your mindset? You know, how are you feeling? And then as soon as you leave high school, it's kind of like more of, yeah, the more I talk to you is based off of your production. And then at the professional level, I mean, that's apparent.
Yeah. Cool. Well, great. Cool story about Coach Norton. So your book, Permission to Dream, can you tell us a little bit about that and what inspired you to write it and what you love so much about it and sharing that story?
Yeah, for me and Permission to Dream, it was pretty much a love-hate relationship writing it because it was there's a lot of stories childhood memories, being bullied, being kind of like feeling like I didn't matter, or I wasn't able to kind of break through of being part of the in crowd, as a child. So that's why it was that experience. And the reason why I wrote it was because every time I would go speak and I would share my story and tell the message, a lot of times people would say, well, that's easy for you to say. Like, it's easy for you to say that, life doesn't suck, or that you can overcome obstacles because of where I was. And I was like, well, we all don't land on the mountaintop, we all climb there. And so I wanted to write the story so that other people could experience their own dreams, but also seeing that obstacles don't define us, nor do they, or were they created to make sure that we stayed kind of away from the dreams and the goals. That obstacles are there just to literally callosize us so that we can overcome and develop the persistence that it takes to get there. And so that was one of the main reasons that I wanted to write the book, but also wanted to make sure that everybody has one inside of them. A dream is inside of us. And when I got off when I stopped playing football in 2012, I was on a flight coming back from the East Coast to the West Coast. My career was over, and I just took out a pad of paper and I started writing about, what was the next part of my life? What do I want to create? What do I want to vision? What do I want to dream about? And ultimately, it was like, wow, this was like an amazing journey. Sports took me places that I could never imagine. Met people that I would never have met any otherwise, and experienced some of like the coolest life experiences a kid could ever dream of. Like, I was a kid from birth to 27.
Yeah.
And so really wanting people to understand that you gotta get on this ride. You gotta get on this roller coaster. Like, I can tell you all about it and it will sound cool, but until you experience it for yourself, you'll never be able to understand. Like, we really won't be able to connect on that level. And so that's what made me want to title it Permission to Dream, and then also encouraging other people to step outside of their comfort zones and just write something down and go try to accomplish that each and every single day.
No, I love it. I relate with the childhood experience a bit. I was born in Louisiana and then moved to the Midwest, so everyone thought I spoke a little funny. Wasn't used to that, so it's kind of through sports and things that got some social equity and things like that, but wasn't easy either. So I relate to that, and thanks for sharing the story. I think I know it's touched a lot of people. I've only been able to read a little bit of it. I will get all the way through it, so I love it. Next question is kind of along that journey. You mentioned Coach Norton. Was there a teammate that supported or elevated your game of play on or off the field, and who might that be, and what was it that made them elevate your game?
I wouldn't be able to necessarily say I had a teammate. I would say the team.
Sure.
And I always reflect back to the stories of USC. USC by far was the greatest team that I was ever a part of. And not just from I think I lost 5 games or something like that. Not just from that standpoint, but I mean, it was literally the epitome of the old quote of the strength of the wolf is the pack, the strength of the pack is the wolf. Like, it epitomized that. And from how Coach Carroll designed competition with everything, where we competed, rock, paper, scissors, video games, who would shower the fastest. Like, I mean, it was crazy, because it just showed and carried over into we didn't want to lose. And so I think the way that practices were set up, where if you were the best player, you played, where practices were set up that if you got dogged or you got beat out one play, it was going to get shown the next day. So nobody ever wanted to be on the low light film. Everybody obviously wanted to be on the highlight film. And it was, I think all of us elevated our game like 2 or 3 notches all the time, because that was a part of our identity. Like, our DNA makeup was, like, I want to win. It doesn't matter if you could be bigger than me, stronger than me, even better than me. But on this next rep, you won't beat me. And it was like a mentality that we all just basically adopted I mean, you can see it that I tell people all the time that my career, I maxed out in college and then getting to the NFL where I wasn't able to sharpen my sword the same way.
Sure. No, it's great, powerful culture, it sounds like, especially with all the great players that I know were on some of those teams for sure.
Yeah.
So kind of from teammate into leadership, and might not necessarily be in college or other walks of life too. Who's the greatest leader you've ever been around, and what qualities made him the greatest leader?
Man, that's a tough question. Greatest leader.
You got more than one in the time. That's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I say Pete Carroll and I say Bill Belichick in the same sentence, and it's really crazy because it's almost like the two of them in the same sentence is like an oxymoron, you know? But I think the reason why they're so great is because they literally believed in everything that came out of their mouth. Like, there wasn't a false word. There wasn't just some cliche BS that they try to feed you. They believed it. And literally living on two opposite ends of the spectrum where Pete Carroll's like fun and happy-go-lucky, and it's just like coming to work feels like amazing. You almost want to come to work because you're going to miss out on having fun. But in the same sentence, it's still work. Where Bill Belichick, on the other hand, I remember my second year in New England, come back right before we left from, I don't know, I think we had a month or 5 weeks off before training camp. He said, I'm just going to let you guys know, we're going to go double days, because this is when you could do double days. He said, we're going to do double days in full pads until I get tired. And it's like, really? That sucks. But he literally believed everything that came out of his mouth in a sense of, like, the Patriot way where, you know, do your job, know your role, quiet the noise, a whole bunch of sayings that they'd had there. And he even said a couple of times, like, I know it sucks playing for me. I get it. But we're, like, our only goal is to win. Like, that's it. It's not really necessarily have fun. It's like to win. Like, that's the only reason why we're here. And I think that's what makes a great leader, is they're able to articulate their beliefs, but then they also follow through and act on them. Where a lot of people, it's not, there's no separation where, you know, talking out one side of your neck over here and then speaking on the other side over here. This is what it is. I say it because I believe it, as opposed to people who might not be as well respected who just say it because, like, it sounds good. But those guys, like, they believed it. Where Bill Belichick spends, you know, obviously we've seen it on TV. You see the hours and hours and hours of, like, film study and knows his opponents, like, where they went to elementary school type thing. Like, it's really beautiful and obsessive at the same way, which is again, I think, credit to his success. And then Pete Carroll, he's all about the mind. He's all about the intention. He's all about the why. Like, you know, what makes a player tick? Can this person fit in our system? Can you have as much fun playing in practice as you can in the game? And it was evident.
No doubt. It's great. So moving on to kind of a topic that I think everyone faces, especially if you compete in something long enough and hard enough. Adversity, I like to say, is competition shadow. Is there advice that you
like that.
it's always there. It's just, how the sun shines on it. But can you talk about maybe an adverse situation and how you tried to focus and get through that, or advice to high school athletes that might be facing some tougher adversity as they compete, and give them advice on how to handle those adverse situations?
Yeah, there's so much. There's so much that I can say like that. I would say to the first part of that, like if it's because I look at, like you said, the adverse situation. It's like either a person
Sure.
So for me, I guess I was wired differently, and it might not be in this whole era of like feel good type situation, but I'll just be, completely transparent, where I've always looked at people in adverse situations, like how people always say like my haters, or people who don't want me to succeed, and people who don't want me to shine. Like, you look at them as like proving them wrong. But I think if we can flip that and switch that into the positive side of it, that there's also on the other end of that spectrum, there's people who we want to prove right, because there's people who believe in us. So finding and identifying the people who want us to do well, instead of just focusing the whole light on like just proving that person wrong, proving that person wrong, proving the person wrong. One, and then kind of like a 1A to that situation is understanding, like when somebody gives us negative feedback or criticism, understand where their perspective is. Where, like, I never allowed like somebody who was non-football oriented to be able to tell me what I could and couldn't do on the football field, because it's only coming from their perspective. And like, that's why I think Coach Norton was so great, is because here's a guy who spent 13 years in the NFL. I think to this day is the only three-peat back-to-back Super Bowl champion. Played on great teams in college, did in the NFL, like done at the highest level. So if he says I can, like, that's a lot of weight.
Yeah.
He's been there, he's done it. Like, he's been to the Pro Bowls, he's won Super Bowls, and so being able to hang my heart on his opinion is a lot more purposeful than somebody who's a friend and maybe never played football, or maybe stopped playing football in high school. You know what I mean?
Sure. Yeah.
So understanding where the resource is and where the opinion's coming from. Coming back to the thing, like, if there's that thing that's bothering you, it's difficult, class, life, circumstances just kind of keep smashing you and hitting you in the face. Taking those difficult situations and being able to kind of crystallize them in a form of, like, whether it's sports, I would always use my frustration on the football. So it's almost like transferring the pain into power, where the harder a life situation presented itself, the more and more pissed off and angry I became on the football field. The harder and harder a specific class was, the more and more I actually dedicated myself to studying, getting better, and becoming more knowledgeable on it. So I think today's, like, when I talk to younger high school kids, I'm like, you can't tell everybody your problems, you can't put all of your frustrations out on social media, because it takes the wind out of the sail. And if I go talking about all of my problems, I'm not going to be able to utilize some of that pain, or most of that pain, for productivity, because I've talked about all my pains, and now, oh my gosh, I feel better, I feel lighter. So those are the things that I have to say. I know that was a lot, but
no, it's good.
Hopefully it makes sense. Yeah,
it's good stuff. So kind of on that advice theme, if you could get into a DeLorean or a time machine and go back and visit 16-year-old you and tell yourself one truth you've learned from competing at the highest levels, what would you tell your 16-year-old self, Thomas?
Oh my gosh, that's a great question. I would always go back and tell myself, like, you're on the right path, and keep going first. I would also tell them that the opinions of other people aren't valid. Like, the people who I worried about in high school. Like, so I'll take myself with being a sophomore on varsity, taking these hard classes, trying to impress people by the way that I dressed or the way that I walked, talked, and acted in high school, that 98% of them, 99% of them won't be in my life in 10 years.
Yeah.
So rather than trying to take their opinions or impress them, focus on the goal, focus on the mission, and focus on the purpose. And keep moving forward with that, because that, at the end of the day, is going to be something that I'm glued to forever. And the people who I wanted to impress or wanted to feel, look at me in a certain light, they weren't going to be there.
Oh, that's good stuff, man. So the last question in this series, definition of success. How do you define that in your life?
I have two. So for a long time, probably since I got in college, especially not playing too much early on in my college career. I only started 10 games, becoming like honorable mention as a senior, which to me was like All-American, just because of the adversity and the obstacles that I had to overcome to obtain it. It was like success was defined by the obstacles overcome to obtain it. So if you had to climb Mount Everest just to lose 5 pounds, then that was successful, as opposed to being somebody who went and, you have a fast metabolism or whatever, or somebody who started off with $1 million and turned it into 1.5, somebody who saved $20,000. So for me, it was where did you start? Based off of where did you started and where you got is a success. And then now I think success is being able to live your life on your own account. So personal freedom and independence.
I like it. Nice. Well, that's great answers. I'm glad you could jump on and do this. It's always inspiring to myself, especially when I can hear them versus read them as well. And one other question is just as you do go do speaking and with athletes and things, what's one of your favorite things that drives you to go out and work with kids or speak with kids and share your story? What drives you to do that?
No doubt, without a shadow of a doubt, is every single audience that I'm blessed and fortunate enough to go speak in front of. Like I always, without a doubt, I identify with somebody. So whether it's a kid, like I see the younger me, 10 years old me, and I'm like, I remember when I was 10 and I met Ronnie Lott at an autograph signing, and I was like, damn, I can do it. Like Ronnie Lott told me I can do it too, and I believed him, and then I did it. And so that's a situation. Or if it's a parent who's like, my kid loves sports and he's having a hard time in class, what are some words of wisdom you have for him? I'm like, that was me. And so I identify with the parent and thinking that, damn, like my mom probably used to go everywhere she possibly could and say, hey, what are some tips that you have for my son who keeps getting, suspended or, acting up in class? So I always, for some strange apparent reason, I always find myself or somebody who was connected to me, like a family member, in every single one of the audiences. So that's what kind of keeps me going in the fire lit, because I get an opportunity